My name is Blair. I'm 34, and I'm sitting on the edge of my bathtub at 11:17 at night, holding a phone that doesn't belong to me, and I am reading something that is going to end my marriage before morning. Craig is asleep in the next room. I can hear him through the wall, the particular rhythm of his breathing that I have memorized over 7 years of sleeping beside him. He went to bed at 10:30. He kissed me on the top of my head. He said, "Don't stay up too late." The phone was in the pocket of his gym bag. I wasn't looking for it. I found it because I was looking for his car keys. I am still holding it. The screen is still lit. And what is on this screen, what I'm reading right now, in this bathroom, with the exhaust fan running and the tile cold under my feet, is not something I can unknow. He had no idea that I was already deciding what came next. Before I take you back to where this started, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love knowing where you're listening from. Now let me take you back to 2.5 years before this moment. 2.5 years before that bathroom floor, I was 31 and we had been married for 4.5 years. I worked as a benefits coordinator at a mid-sized insurance company called Sefton Group, 9th floor of a glass building downtown, a desk that faced a window, and outside that window, a view of the parking structure across the street, and, if you lean slightly left, a narrow slice of the river. I leaned slightly left most mornings. It helped. My routine was, alarm at 6:10, out by 7:20. The same travel mug I'd been refilling since graduate school, dark green. Small dent on the left side where I dropped it in the parking garage once. I ate lunch at my desk 4 days out of 5. Leftover something, usually in a container Craig would sometimes pack for me in the mornings without being asked. That detail matters. I want you to hold it. I am precise by nature. I notice things. I track things. In my job, I reviewed benefits enrollment data for discrepancies, a skill that is less exciting than it sounds but more useful than I gave it credit for, as it turned out. Craig was a project manager at a civil engineering firm. He was organized, efficient, good at reading a room. He was the kind of man who remembered everyone's coffee order after meeting them once, who sent thank you texts the morning after a dinner party, who could make a waitress laugh every single time without trying. That ease, that particular social ease, was the first thing I noticed about him and one of the last things I trusted about him. By the end, I understood that it worked on everyone, including me. Especially me. We had met at a friend's engagement party, a mutual orbit of people in their late 20s, a rooftop bar in August, the kind of night where everything feels easier than it is. He brought me a drink I hadn't asked for. I said, "How did you know?" He said, "You looked like someone who needed one." It was a line. I knew it was a line. I liked it anyway. We were married 3 years later. Small ceremony, 26 people, my grandmother's backyard, a caterer who was almost good enough. It was a good day. I mean that plainly without irony. It was a genuinely good day. In the early years he was present. That is the honest word, present. He came home when he said he would. He called when he was going to be late. He asked, in the evening, how my day had been, and he actually listened to the answer. He had opinions about things I cared about, and was interested in my opinions about things he didn't fully understand. We were, for the first 3 years, a functional marriage, maybe more than functional. Maybe something I would have called good, if asked. He had one quality I loved from the beginning, and only understood correctly much later. He was never rattled. Nothing surprised him visibly. He moved through every situation, difficult conversations, unexpected problems, disappointments, with this particular steadiness that I had mistaken, for years, for security. I understand now that it wasn't steadiness. It was practice. He had been managing multiple realities for long enough that nothing surprised him anymore because he had already accounted for everything. The calm I had read as safety was just expertise. His sister's name is Lois. She is 2 years older than Craig, a quiet woman, works in hospital administration, keeps her own counsel. We were not close exactly, but we were cordial. She came to Christmas. She sent birthday cards on time. She was the kind of in-law who took up no space and asked for nothing, which I appreciated. I met Patrice at a company leadership workshop in the second year of my job at Sefton. She ran the HR division 3 floors above me, a woman in her mid-50s with natural silver locks, reading glasses she was always misplacing, and the particular energy of someone who has spent 30 years watching people make decisions they know are wrong and has learned to wait instead of argue. She became my mentor quietly, the way things become true before you've named them. We had coffee on the 14th floor once a week. She listened carefully. She said less than you expected her to say, and when she spoke, it was always the thing you hadn't let yourself think yet. The first sign that something was wrong was not dramatic. It was a Tuesday evening in March, about 2.5 years before the bathroom floor. Craig had gone to the gym. He went 3 evenings a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and sometimes Thursdays. This was a Tuesday. He went anyway, which I noted and filed away without deciding what to do with it. He came home at 9:40, a full hour and 20 minutes later than a gym trip normally took, given that our gym was 11 minutes from the house. He came in smelling of soap, which meant he showered there. He was in a good mood, relaxed, warm, the version of himself I had always liked most. He asked if I was hungry. He made eggs. I said nothing about the time. I watched him at the stove and I thought, maybe, that was all. Just maybe. I went to bed and I let it go. But I was a benefits coordinator. I tracked discrepancies for a living. And something in the back of my mind, something very quiet, something that had not yet decided whether it wanted to be a thought or just a feeling, had written down. Tuesday, 9:40. Showered at the gym. I want to tell you about the next 26 months because that is how long this went on. Not days, not weeks. 26 months of small discrepancies that I noticed and almost explained away, 41 of them, before the gym bag and the phone. Here is what a slow betrayal looks like from the inside. It looks like your husband's phone face down on the table. Not always, not every time, but often enough that you notice. And when you ask him about it, he says the screen glare bothers him, or he's trying to be more present, or the case is slippery and it stands better flat. Each answer is plausible. Each answer costs you nothing to accept. So you accept it and you go back to your dinner. It looks like a new gym bag appearing in March, nicer than the old one, structured leather handles, the kind of bag that is chosen rather than grabbed. Craig said his old one had a broken zipper. That was plausible too. I almost didn't look at the bag again. It looks like a charge on the joint credit card from a restaurant I didn't recognize, $147. On a Wednesday in April, when Craig had told me he was working late on the Hartfield project. I mentioned it over the weekend. He said a client had been in town and he'd taken them to dinner on the card by accident, meant to expense it. He expensed it the following week. I watched the transaction clear. I said nothing more. But I wrote it down. I had a notes app on my phone, private, biometric locked, the kind of thing I had used for years for work observations. I started a new note in April of that first year. I titled it, Questions, not evidence, not Craig, just questions. I wrote, Wednesday, April 9th, $147 restaurant charge, client dinner unconfirmed. That was the first entry. There would be 38 more. Month 8. Craig begins going to the gym on Saturday mornings, not every Saturday, 4 out of every 6. He leaves at 8:30, back by 11. I don't go to the gym. This is established, it's not a change he needs to explain. But the Saturday mornings begin to have a quality to them when he comes home. A particular ease. The same ease as that first Tuesday in March, like a man returning from something that agreed with him. I notice, I write it down, sat gym, pattern starting. Month 11. We go to Craig's company holiday party in December. Craig is in his element, working the room, coffee order memory on full display, the version of himself that everyone outside our house gets. I am beside him and I am watching, and at some point I notice that his phone buzzes 4 times in the span of 40 minutes. He does not check it. He keeps the phone in his jacket pocket, and each time it buzzes he shifts his weight slightly, one shoulder dropping, a fractional adjustment, and keeps talking. A small physical tell of someone managing something they are not ready to address in public. On the car ride home I say, you had a lot of messages tonight. He says, work stuff. The Caldwell deadline is Monday, I say. On a Friday night in December? He says, project management doesn't respect holidays. He glances at me and smiles, the particular smile warm and uncomplicated. You know how it is. I smile back. I say, I do. I write it down when I get home. Holiday party, 4 buzzes, pocket, shoulder tell. Month 14. This is where the money started. I handled our household budget the way I handled everything, precisely. Joint checking, joint savings, our own credit cards linked to a shared portal. Craig was not financially careless. He paid his card on time. He didn't overspend. What he did, and I only saw this in retrospect, once I had all the pieces, was conduct an entirely separate financial life using a separate card I had no access to and no knowledge of. I found the first trace of it by accident. I was filing our taxes, my job, as always, and I pulled Craig's credit report as part of the documentation process. Standard. He knew I did it every year. There was a card I didn't recognize. A travel rewards card, opened 22 months earlier. The balance at filing time, $4,340. The credit limit, $12,000. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time with that number. Craig was in the living room watching something. I could hear the television. I went and asked him about the card. Calmly, I said I'd seen it on the credit report while doing the taxes. He was completely unrattled. He said he'd opened it for work travel. The reward structure was better for hotels, and it kept work expenses separate from our household cards so I didn't have to sort through them. It made sense on the surface. He traveled occasionally for work. The explanation was tidy. I said, that makes sense. Can you send me the last few statements so I can make sure I'm pulling everything correctly for the return? He said of course. He sent me 3 months of statements. The charges were plausible, hotels, restaurants, a few airline fees, nothing I could point to. But the card had been open for 22 months, he had sent me 3. I wrote, travel card minus 22 months open, 3 statements provided, 19 months missing. I was doing math in the margin of my notes. If the card averaged even $400 a month in charges over 19 hidden months, conservative, given the balance, that was $7,600 I had not seen. I did not ask for the other statements. Not yet. I needed more before I said more. Month 18. I tell Patrice, not everything. I tell her, I think something is wrong and I can't name it yet. She sets her coffee cup down. She looks at me. She says, how long have you known? I say, I don't know yet. That's the problem. She says, yes you do. You just haven't let yourself say it. I look at the 14th floor window. The river is visible from up here, gray in February. She says, what does the pattern look like? I tell her, Tuesday gym trips, Saturday mornings. The phone face down, the holiday party, the card. She is quiet for a moment. Then she says, that's not a suspicion. That's a record, I said. I know, she said. Stop calling it questions. I went back downstairs. I opened the notes app. I renamed the file. I named it, Evidence, month 22. Craig goes to a work conference in another city for 3 nights. He texts me from the hotel, a photo of the room, the view, a caption that says miss you already. I save the photo. I note the timestamp. Later that week, out of habit, I checked the travel card statement. He had finally added me to the online portal, another tidy gesture of transparency. The hotel charge is there, the right city, the right dates. But there are also 3 restaurant charges, 2 bar charges, and 1 charge from a florist, $67, from a florist. In a city he was in for work. I write it down, florist, $67, March 14th. I do not say anything. By month 26, I had 41 entries. I had a card statement I downloaded myself, the full 22 months, pulled from the joint portal once I had access, that showed $14,880 in charges I had never been shown. I had a pattern of Tuesday evenings and Saturday mornings that had not varied in 18 months. I had a florist charge on a Wednesday in March, and I had a gym bag on the floor of our bedroom that I had never opened. Until that night. Quick pause here. If you've ever been the person who kept everything running while everyone else took credit, you know exactly what this feels like. If that's you, hit subscribe. I share stories like this every week. Now, back to where things were about to fall apart. It was a Thursday. Craig had gone to the gym, actually gone this time. I had no reason to think otherwise, and come home at 8:55. We'd had dinner, we'd watched something. He'd kissed me on the top of the head at 10:30 and gone to bed. I stayed up. I did this sometimes. Stayed up after he went to bed, reading or working, the house quiet in the way I had always liked. The kitchen light on, the rest of the house dark, the refrigerators hummed the only sound. At 11:10 I went to get my jacket from the coat closet. My keys weren't in my jacket pocket, which was where I always put them. I thought I might have left them in the car, and I needed to check the garage door was down. I went through the mudroom. I thought maybe I set them in Craig's gym bag by mistake when I moved it earlier. I sometimes moved it off the bench when I came in from the garage. I unzipped the main compartment. No keys. There was a phone. Dark screen. Small scratch along the bottom corner. A plain black case, no brand, the kind you buy to be unremarkable. I picked it up. I should tell you, I was not expecting this. I was looking for keys. I had 41 entries in a notes file and a renamed folder and a downloaded credit card statement, but I had not expected to hold the thing itself in my hand. It was not locked. I stood in the mudroom for a moment with the phone in my hand and the gym bag at my feet and a light on in the kitchen behind me, and I made a decision, not a dramatic one, a quiet one. I took the phone to the bathroom. I closed the door. I turned on the exhaust fan. And I read. I will not describe in detail what was on that phone. I will tell you that it was a second number, an app-based number, untraceable to a carrier, the kind that exists specifically to be a second number. I will tell you that the messages went back 27 months. I will tell you that there was a name. I will tell you that there were photographs. I will tell you that there was, in the thread, a message from 4 days earlier in which Craig had written, "She doesn't know anything. She never will, me." I sat on the edge of the bathtub. I cried for a long time. The exhaust fan ran. The tile was cold through my socks. I was not crying. I want to be precise about this. My eyes stayed dry. What was happening inside me was something more like a reckoning, the feeling of 41 entries in a notes file suddenly becoming one coherent thing with a name. I was not surprised. That was the strange part. I was not surprised in the way you are surprised by something you didn't see coming. I was surprised in the way you are surprised when something you have been bracing against for 2 years finally arrives and is exactly as heavy as you expected it to be. I photographed the thread, every message I could reach. I sent them to the private email account I had created 6 months earlier, the one linked to a separate Gmail, not our shared account, which I had set up after entry number 29 in the file. In a quiet moment of preparation I had not fully explained to myself at the time. Then I went back to the messages. I found a name. I will not say it here. I found an address mentioned offhandedly in a thread from 4 months back. I found a reference to a restaurant, the same restaurant from the $147 charge in April, now with a context I did not previously have. I screenshot everything. I put the phone back exactly where I had found it. Main compartment, same position. I zipped the bag. I went back to the kitchen. I sat down at the table. I opened my laptop. I moved everything from the evidence folder into a new subfolder, the credit card statements, the notes file, the 41 entries, the photographs I'd just sent from the second phone. I named the subfolder, Complete. Then I opened a new document and I wrote, in the plain language of someone who processes data for a living, discovery date, tonight. Material confirmed, second phone, 27 months of messages, financial record consistent with secondary relationship. Next step, legal consultation. I saved it. I closed the laptop. I sat in the kitchen for 11 more minutes. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, someone's car went past slowly in the rain. I looked at the kitchen, the table we'd picked out together, the light fixture I'd installed myself because Craig hadn't gotten to it, and I'd finally decided to just learn how. The dish towel folded over the oven handle the way I always folded it. Then I went to the bedroom. Craig was asleep. His breathing was even and slow. I stood in the doorway for a moment. Then I got into bed. I lay there in the dark and I thought, tomorrow I call Patrice. Then I thought, no, tonight. I took my phone into the bathroom. I texted Patrice. I found it. Can you talk tomorrow morning? Early. Her reply came back in 4 minutes. 11:49 p.m. I'll be at the office at 7. Come up before anyone else gets in. I went back to bed. I lay in the dark and listened to him breathe. I did not sleep. Patrice's office at 7 a.m. smelled like the coffee she'd already made, and the particular stillness of a building before it fills with people. She closed the door when I came in. She did not ask how I was. She sat down, and I sat down, and I told her. I told her everything, not the emotional version. The documented version, the one I had spent 26 months compiling without fully admitting to myself that I was compiling it. The 41 entries, the credit card, the restaurant charge and its now confirmed context, the florist, the phone. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How much is on the card?" I said, $14,880. That's what I can document, she said. How long has the relationship been going on? I said, 27 months. Based on the messages. She was quiet again. She said, "You have all of this documented." I said, "Yes," she said. "Then you are not the one who is behind here. You're already ahead." She reached into her desk drawer and put a business card on the table. A family law attorney, a woman named Renata Childs. Patrice said she had referred 3 people to Renata in the past 8 years. She said, she does not waste time and she does not let the other side waste hers. I took the card. Patrice said, "One more thing." She folded her hands on the desk. The card in his name, was it opened during the marriage? I said, 22 months ago, yes, she said. In our state, debt accrued during a marriage is marital debt in a divorce proceeding. Both parties are responsible. Which means you could be on the hook for $14,880 of his hidden expenses. I looked at her. She said, "Call Renata today." I called Renata from the parking garage at 8:07 a.m. She had a consultation slot at 3 p.m. I took it. What I did not know, what Craig did not know I was doing, was that between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. on that Friday, I assembled the complete evidence package. I printed the full credit card statement, 22 months, highlighted. I printed the notes file minus 41 entries, dated. I printed the email chain from my private account, which contained the screenshots from the second phone, timestamped. I printed the entry I had written the night before. Discovery date, tonight. I put it all in a manila folder. I wrote one word on the tab, complete. Renata Childs had a small office that smelled like printer ink and cold air from an overworking Shivac system. She was in her early 50s, compact, with reading glasses and the particular efficiency of someone who does not arrange her desk for anyone's comfort except her own. She read my folder in 31 minutes. She asked 9 questions. Every question had a specific answer because I had documented specifically. At the end she said, "This is well organized." I said, "I'm a benefits coordinator. I process data." She said, "Keep doing that." She told me what was possible. She told me what the credit card meant and how marital asset and debt law applied in our state. She told me that the existence of the secondary relationship, while not the primary legal mechanism of a divorce proceeding, created context for the financial conduct, the concealed card, the hidden expenses, the funds spent on a secondary relationship from income that was partially marital. She told me that I had a strong position. She also told me this: "Do you want to confront him tonight, or do you want to give me 2 weeks to file first?" I thought about it for exactly 4 seconds. I said, "Tonight." She said, "Then here is what you do not say, and here is what you do say." She talked for 11 minutes. I took notes. What Craig did not know, as he sat in our living room that Friday evening, was that I had spoken to a family law attorney. That I had a manila folder with 41 entries and a 22-month credit card statement and screenshots from his second phone already filed in Renata's system. That Renata would be filing paperwork on Monday morning. What he did not know was that, when he kissed me on the top of my head at 10:30 the night before and said, "Don't stay up too late," I was already 2 steps past the point he thought we were at. What he did not know was that Patrice had made a call. To Lois, not to tell her everything. Just to say, "Something is happening, and your brother needs to be available to talk to you this weekend." Lois had asked no questions. She had said, "I understand." What she knew, what Lois had known, it turned out, for longer than I expected, was something she would tell me only later, in a text, after everything was already done. She wrote, "I saw them once, 6 months ago, at a restaurant downtown. I didn't know what to do. I'm sorry I didn't call you." She hadn't called. I understood why. It is very hard to call someone and say, "I think your marriage is not what you believe it is." I did not hold it against her, but I filed it away. Because it was one more entry in a record that was already complete. Alright, I need to pause here for just a second because this next part, I've never told anyone the full version. If you're still here, thank you. That means something. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And drop a comment. What would you have done? Okay, here's what happened. Craig came home at 6:22 on Friday evening. I know the exact time because I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open to a work document I had not been reading for 40 minutes, and I watched the clock reach 6:22, and then I heard his key in the lock. The kitchen smelled like the dinner I had made, something with garlic and olive oil, ordinary and warm. I had made dinner on purpose. I had set the table on purpose. I wanted the room to feel like every other Friday evening, right up until the moment it didn't. Craig came through the door and set his bag down and said, "Something smells good." He came into the kitchen and looked at the table and smiled. That particular smile, warm and uncomplicated. He said, "You didn't have to do all this." I said, "Sit down." Something in my voice, the register of it, the flatness, made him still. Not alarmed, not yet, but still, he sat. I closed the laptop. I said, "I found the phone." He did not move, not a muscle. That particular stillness that I had spent 7 years calling steadiness, there it was, applied now in the exact direction I had always feared it might be applied. He said, "What phone?" Not a question, a position. I said, "The one in the gym bag, the app-based number." 27 months of messages. I paused. I know her name. The room was very quiet. The garlic smell. The overhead light casting everything in that particular domestic warmth that had nothing to do with how I felt. He said, "Blair." I said, "I'm not finished." He stopped. I said, "I also pulled the full statement on the travel card. Not the 3 months you sent me, all 22. $14,880. Restaurants, hotels, a florist in March." I looked at him. "I know which restaurant. I know the date." His face had changed. Not collapsed. Craig's face did not collapse, but the steadiness had shifted quality. It was no longer ease. It was calculation. I could see him working through options, scenarios, the version of this conversation that cost him the least. He said, "I can't explain." I said, "You don't have to." That stopped him. I said, "I met with a family law attorney this afternoon, Renata Childs. Her office has the documentation. She's filing on Monday." The color changed in his face. That I could not have predicted. The actual color change, the way the warmth drained out from underneath. He was still sitting straight. He was still composed. But the face was different now. He said, "You're not serious." I said, "I have been serious for 26 months. I just wasn't saying it out loud." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, and his voice had dropped to something quieter, more careful, the voice he used when he was trying to change the temperature of a room. "We can fix this. I'll end it. We can go to counseling." "Blair, 7 years," I said, 7 years. I said it back to him the same way he said it, not cruel. Just an acknowledgement. I said, "The first entry in my notes file is from 2.5 years ago. A Tuesday gym trip in March. I have been watching you for 2.5 years, Craig. I have 41 entries. I have the card statement. I have the screenshots." I paused. "I have been doing this very quietly while you were certain I didn't know anything." He said nothing. I said, "Your bag is in the mudroom. I'd like you to take it with you tonight." He looked at me. He said, "You want me to leave?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Tonight?" I said, "Yes." He sat for another moment. Then he stood. He went to the mudroom. I heard him moving around the closet, his shoes, the bag. He came back through the kitchen and stopped at the doorway. He looked at me at the kitchen table. He said, "I didn't think you'd ever find it." I looked at him. I said, "I know." He left. The door closed behind him. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The garlic smell was fading. The overhead light hummed faintly. I looked at the dinner I had made and I thought, I should eat something. So I did. I served myself a plate. I ate at the table in the quiet kitchen, and I looked at the narrow slice of nothing that was visible through the kitchen window at night, and I sat with what had just happened, and I let it be what it was. My phone rang at 8:14. "Craig." I did not answer. It rang again at 8:31, and at 9:02, I did not answer. At 9:18, a text from Lois. He called me. I told him I already knew. I told him you deserve better. "I'm sorry, Blair." I read it twice. I typed back, "Thank you." Then I washed my plate. I folded the dish towel over the oven handle. I turned off the kitchen light. I went to bed. I slept for 8 hours. The first unbroken sleep I had in longer than I could clearly remember. Renata filed on Monday morning, as promised. The divorce proceedings took 6 months, not contentious exactly, but not clean either. Craig had retained his own attorney, who pushed on several points. None of them held. The travel card, $14,880 in marital debt, was assigned entirely to Craig in the settlement, given the documented evidence that the charges had been incurred in the context of a concealed secondary relationship. His attorney objected. Renata presented the highlighted statement. The objection was withdrawn. Our joint assets were divided equitably. I kept the house. I had been the one managing the mortgage, the maintenance, the insurance, and I assumed the remaining balance, which was workable on my salary. Craig received his share of the joint savings account, $31,400 split evenly. I received mine. What I did not expect was the conversation with Lois. She called me 2 weeks after Craig moved out. She asked if she could come by. I said yes. She arrived on a Saturday afternoon with coffee from the place on Delaney Street. She remembered my order, which I had not expected, and she sat at my kitchen table and she told me what she knew. She had seen them at dinner 6 months before the phone. A restaurant downtown, the same restaurant from the $147 charge, as it happened. She had been with a friend. Craig had not seen her. She had not said anything to me because she didn't know how. And because she had hoped she was wrong, and because she was his sister and was not sure whose side she was supposed to be on. She said, "I've thought about that night a lot." She said, "I should have called you." She said, "I read the numbers when his lawyer told him what you had. I didn't know it had gone that far. I didn't know how long it had been going on." I told her I didn't hold it against her, I meant it. She looked at me, the same direct look Craig had always had, but in her it meant something different, something slower and more honest. And she said, "You handle this better than I would have." I said, "I had a good teacher." Patrice took me to lunch the week after the settlement finalized. She chose the restaurant, a good one, the kind with cloth napkins and bread that arrives without being asked for. She ordered wine. She raised her glass and said, "To benefits coordinators who track discrepancies." I laughed. It was the first time I had laughed fully in I don't know how long, and the sound of it surprised me. She said, "What now?" I said, "The same thing, just more mine." She nodded. She understood. The house was different without Craig in it, quieter, more orderly in some ways. There were no gym bags in the mudroom, no face-down phone on the table, no Tuesday evening timing discrepancies. There were also, for a while, mornings that were harder than I wanted to admit. 7 years of habit is 7 years of habit. You don't undo that in a settlement agreement. But 6 months after he left, I repainted the living room. A color I had wanted for 2 years and had never pushed for. I did it myself, on a Saturday, with a podcast on and the windows open and the smell of paint and October air coming through. I moved the kitchen table to face the window. Not the parking structure view. The river view, the one I had to lean left to catch from the 9th floor. At home, it was there for free. I sat there with my coffee the next morning and I looked at the river and I thought, this is the right direction to face. When I think about the 26 months between that first Tuesday in March and the night of the gym bag, I don't think about what I missed. I think about what I kept. Every entry in that notes file was an act of self-respect, not a dramatic one. Not an angry one. Just the quiet insistence of a woman who processed data for a living applied to her own life, saying, "This is real, this happened. I am writing it down." That is the thing I want to say most clearly. You are allowed to trust what you notice. The phone face down. The timing that doesn't add up. The ease that feels practiced rather than natural. Those things are not paranoia. They are pattern recognition. And pattern recognition, documented over time, is evidence. What I know about Craig is that he was capable of warmth and also capable of 27 months of precise, deliberate concealment. He packed my lunch sometimes. He remembered everyone's coffee order. He also maintained a second phone in a gym bag for 2.5 years and wrote "she doesn't know anything about me" in a message thread. Both of those people were the same man. I have had to learn to hold that without needing it to make sense. Patrice is still on the 14th floor. We still have coffee on Tuesdays. She once told me, the moment you renamed that file was the moment the whole thing changed. She wasn't talking about the confrontation. She was talking about a quiet Tuesday morning 6 months earlier when I sat at my desk and changed one word, from questions to evidence, and became someone who knew what she was doing. My life now is orderly and mine. I take the same route to work. I still have the dark green travel mug. I still eat lunch at my desk most days. But the kitchen table faces the river now, and there is no gym bag in the mudroom. And when I go to bed at night, the breathing in the room is only mine. Here is what I want to say to anyone who is watching and has a notes file they haven't named yet. Name it. You already know what it is. You have known for longer than you are admitting. Name it, write it down. And trust what you notice. That's Blair's story. Or maybe in some way it's yours too. If you've ever been the one holding everything together while everyone else let go, I see you. Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this meant something to you, subscribe. There are more stories in the description. Women who decided enough was enough and did something about it. I'll see you in the next one.